The NHL trade deadline is fast approaching. Find out who I think the Hurricanes need to go after and what positions they need to be targeting in this episode of Locked On Hurricanes.
You're Locked On Hurricanes, your daily podcast on the Carolina Hurricanes. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hey there, Caniacs. I'm your host, Jared Ellis, and you're listening to Locked On Hurricanes on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And as always, thank you for making Locked On Hurricanes your first listen of the day, no matter when you're listening, morning, afternoon, night, whenever. Thank you very much. We appreciate it. And today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code Locked On for $20 off your first purchase. Now, the NHL trade deadline is coming up fast, folks. It is going to be here before we know it. It is that next week? Hold on. Hold on a second. Is it really next week? It really is next Friday, folks. Friday, March 8th is a trade deadline day. For whatever reason, I still thought it was like 2 weeks away. But no, it is next Friday. That is going to be here before we know it, folks. And the Carolina Hurricanes, they are kind of in the same position they have been. They are a really good team, but it feels like they're missing like one or two pieces to get them over the hump. And how many years have we been saying that now? But they very well, I think this year could be the year they finally decide to like actually make a splash rather than just the random deadline moves that they are kind of known for making, where they very much take like the money ball playbook and try to go super analytical with it. But this year I feel like could be the year they go out and make a move. If you remember back when they were struggling, Rod Brind'amour was kind of hinting in the press of they need some help. Moves need to be made. So I wonder if that is still the case as of recording on February 29th. Do they still go? Do they still feel that way, or do they? We like our group, type stuff. Again, obviously, it'd be very easy for us to just say, oh, they're going to do the we like our group thing again. They're going to make a couple moves here and there, but it's not going to be really anything of note, really. And I do think there is probably a strong possibility we'll see that yet again this year. I do. But I think this year could be a little bit different. At the deadline, it's the same two things that we've been talking about all season that they need, the past few seasons that they need. They need to go out, get a true goal scorer, a guy that can go to the net and finish, and then potentially look at upgrading your goaltending position. We've obviously talked a lot about the goaltending as of late. They got 4 goalies right now, 2 of which are out of action. And who knows how things going to shake out when Freddie and Ronta come back. What's going to happen there? Are they going to come back good? Are they going to come back bad? What's going to happen there? Can Kochetkov and Martin take you to the promised land? Both are obviously playing really good right now. We talked a lot about Spencer Martin in a previous episode of how he fits into things for the Hurricanes. And the thing I mentioned there is one thing that could affect him and his future with the Hurricanes is what they decide to do at the deadline. If they make a move for a goalie, does that affect whether or not he would want to come back? If the Hurricanes would want him back, if he continues the play he is at right now. So that would be interesting there. And then obviously Kochetkov, he's likely going to be the number one goalie of the future for the Hurricanes. So we'll just have to wait and see there. And then obviously the goal scorer, that's kind of the big thing, really, that I think they really, really need to address at the deadline. I think, they could make it work with the goaltending they have. They could. They could. I'm not saying they will, because playoffs are a totally different breed than a regular season. So they still may want to go out and upgrade at the goalie position because, like I said, who knows how Antti Ranta is going to be when he comes back, how and if Freddie Anderson is going to be if and when he comes back this season. So those are some big question marks there that could definitely play a factor into whether or not they go out and get a goalie. Again, Ranta's been out close to a month now. So, and we really haven't heard anything on it either of whether or not, okay, he'll be back mid March or anything like that. We haven't really heard anything at all. So that's going to be interesting there in terms of goalie trades. That's very interesting. But again, I think where they need to focus their efforts is the goal scores. And there's a few names here that I think they could go after. Two biggest names, honestly, both from Anaheim, actually, Adam Henrique and Frank Vetrano. Both of those guys having some good seasons, and with Henrique, with how with the Hurricanes potentially looking at number 2 center, with how things have not panned out this season with Jesper Kotkaniemi, that could be a move that gets made there. He is obviously Henrique being a pending UFA, so he would definitely be a rental. If they wouldn't be able to get an extension done, of course. And with all of this trade stuff, right now the Hurricanes have a little over 5.6 million in cap space to play with at the deadline. So depending on what they do at the deadline, they may not really have to move much money out, or if they decide to make a couple big moves, they may have to move some money out. Frank Vetrano is the one that I'm thinking would be more likely for the Hurricanes. And it's kind of the one that I've seen online. That's kind of the one that people are more so wanting than Henrique. Obviously, folks are wanting both, but Vetrano seems to be the one people are leaning more towards. He has a year left on his deal as well, because we've seen in the past where, much like the Vincent Trocheck and Brady Shea deals years ago, how they like to go if they're going to make a move, not just a random deadline move. They like to go after guys with some term left on their deals. I think Vetrano fits that bill. He's had a really good season there in Anaheim, doing what he can with that team. Has 3.65 million cap hit, so he would still fit into what the Hurricanes have right now, and they wouldn't, in theory, have to move out a bunch of money or anything like that. I think Vetrano may be the most likely one to happen. But we're just gonna have to wait and see on that. I think we had talked about John Gibson in the past as well in terms of a goalie for them, but at this point, I just don't see the Hurricanes making that trade. I feel like kind of the time has passed for them to do that one. So I'm going to retire that trade at this point. Feels like it's just never going to happen. It's only going to be one that happens in a video game, honestly. Whatever NHL game it is at this point, I think 24. Yeah, it'd be 24 at this point. It's a trade that happens there. It's not going to be one that necessarily happens in real life this point. But I think Vetrano is probably gonna be would be the most likely, for them to make a move at the deadline. Again, kind of fits the bill of what they're looking for. Has a reasonable cap hit for them, has that term left on his deal. So I kind of see that. I think that one fits the bill for the Hurricanes. Again, he has had a good season so far this year as well. I want to say he's at 26 goals on the year so far. Um, yeah, 26 goals on the year so far, 19 assists, 45 points there for the Ducks on the wing. So definitely again fits the bill for what they would be looking for. Um, the Hurricanes definitely have the assets to go and get him as well. Um, Adam Henrique, again, another one that would be a very interesting move of what they would like to do. He is currently sitting at 16 goals, 22 assists, 38 points on the season. Um, so, should the Hurricanes want to go out and get a rental center, then maybe. He is 34 years old, obviously, so it's not really going to be a guy you're going to have around super long term either. But the Hurricanes may be in like, all right, let's go all in. They could totally have that mindset at this deadline of going all in and making some moves. Do they do that one? Maybe. Again, I think Vetrano is the more likely there with Anaheim. But there's definitely still a lot of other guys that I think the Hurricanes could be going after at the deadline. And we will dive into those right after this quick break, folks. Now, folks, we've talked a lot about game time here on the show, and we're going to continue to talk about them for any of those that are new here. And you shouldn't have to worry when you buy tickets for your next big event, folks. Game time is the fast and easy way to buy all the tickets for the sports, music, comedy, and theater events near you with killer last minute deals, all in prices, views from your seat, and their best price guarantee. Game time takes the guesswork out of buying tickets. I've said before how when me and a friend of mine, when we went to AEW Collision up in Greensboro, we used Game Time, and our favorite feature was being able to see our seats in the app. Going around Greensboro Coliseum, trying to figure out where we wanted to sit. And we got a great spot down in the lower bowl, looking directly at the ring, directly at the ramp. And we had a great time. And then a couple weeks ago, a friend of mine wanted to go to a concert with me, and she needed to get her ticket pretty last minute. And Game Time had her covered. Literally lowest price compared to all the other apps. I'm not joking, folks. They had her covered as well. So Game Time again has deals on tickets right up to the start of the event and even an hour after the event starts. It is the place to find last minute seats, folks. They are not joking. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code locked on for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code locked on. That's LOCKEDON for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed, folks. Now, looking elsewhere for goal scorers, there's been a couple others that have had their names attached to the Hurricanes, both pending UFA or yes, UFAs. thought I totally misspoke there for a second. That is Anthony Duclair from San Jose. San Jose is pretty much just going to be a fire sale this year. Um, with their pending UFAs, pretty much anyone they can move, they're going to move. Duclair has been a name that the Hurricanes have been linked to. Whether or not they will is going to be a different question because, again, we have seen so many times of the we like our group type stuff. But again, with San Jose being not great this year, and Duclair hasn't had a really great year this year either, sitting at 11 goals, 8 assists so far this year through 52 games played. Definitely has not been the best there. And again, San Jose hasn't been great either. So you take him, put him in the Hurricane system, maybe he could get things going there. He's going to be a guy that's totally going to be on the move regardless. Um, so he's again been a name attached to the Hurricanes. Whether or not they do it's another question. And then Vladimir Tarasenko as well. He is another guy I've seen being around on the trade talk again. Is obviously is a very interesting off season with him. With him looking like he was going to come to the Hurricanes, didn't come to the Hurricanes, signed that 1-year deal with Ottawa. So that's going to be an interesting one. He's definitely a guy that could potentially get traded at the deadline. So we'll just have to wait and see there. He's had 15 goals, 23 assists, 38 points through 55 games played this year. In Ottawa, yeah, they're not doing great this year again. Um, so they could potentially be looking at moving on from him. Again, there was already interest there from the Hurricanes in the offseason. Is that going to be one that they go back to? Again, they could really use the scoring from any of these guys. Again, I think Vetrana is probably their best bet here. He is the one guy, as far as your goal scorers that I have listed here, that are not going to be a rental. He's a guy that still has term left on his deal, and that is something the Hurricanes like. So I think that could potentially play a factor into a number of trade deadline deals because, as I mentioned earlier, with those Trocheck and Shea deals back in the day, didn't really see those coming until they happened. Those kind of took folks by surprise when they happened. So it also wouldn't surprise me if we saw something similar um, this year of them making moves actually, but they're going after guys with term left on their deal. That wouldn't surprise me if they went that route. Also, they of course you'd have to factor in upcoming contracts like Jacob Slavin's coming, Brett Pesci and Brady Shea both. Um, what they're going to do there, and then you have your goaltending situation. What are you going to do there? There are so many question marks heading into this trade deadline, but again, I think Frank Vetrano, if they're going to make a move for a goal scorer, that is probably going to be their best bet. Again, you could throw Henrique in there, you could throw Tarasenko and Duclair in there, you could throw those names around in there, and it wouldn't necessarily surprise me if they did. I think Henrique may be the least likely out of all of them. But I think Frank Vetrano, he fits the bill the best in terms of a goal scorer for the Hurricanes to pick up at the deadline. Now, we did talk about other needs, and that being goalies. And we've talked a little bit about this before, but I do want to touch on it again, and we will do that right after this quick break, folks. Now, folks, we are over halfway through the NHL season, but it doesn't matter where the Hurricanes are in the current standings. I want to remind you that you could win big by playing daily fantasy hockey on Sleeper, the daily fantasy app of the Locked On NHL Network. Sleeper is our number one choice for daily fantasy sports, and especially daily fantasy hockey because with Sleeper, you can win 100 times your cash in daily fantasy hockey contests. And all you have to do, folks, is pick whether studs like Sebastian Aho, Andrei Svechnikov, Pyotr Kochetkov, or any of your other favorite players around the league will record more or less their sleeper projections for things like goals, assists, saves, plus minus, and more in a given game. To win a 100 times bet on Sleeper, you need to correctly predict the outcome of 8 player stats. You heard me, Canes fans. You can win 100 times your money playing daily fantasy hockey on Sleeper. So start paying attention and nail your picks so you can start winning big. Use promo code Locked On NHL and you'll get up to a $100 match on your first deposit. Terms and conditions apply. That's code Locked On NHL. See Sleeper's terms of use for details and locational availability. Now, looking at the goalie market for the Hurricanes, this is one we've talked a bit about before. Guys they could potentially go after. Now, as we talked about earlier, the goalie position that's really going to be up in the air for the Hurricanes. Freddie Anderson's health, Antti Ranta's health, and potential retirement. Can Kochetkov handle it? Can Spencer Morton maintain the level of play he's been at? Can Martin and Kochetkov handle it in the playoffs? Should Ranta and Anderson not be available? A lot of questions there, folks. And definitely I think they should be looking at the goalie trade market at the deadline. I really do. But we've said that before, so we'll see what ends up happening. But 3 names really are sticking out. 2 I feel are at this point probably a bit unlikely, and that being Jacob Markstrom and Marc-Andre Fleury. Marc-Andre Fleury really kind of feels like he doesn't want to leave Minnesota, but yeah, he's obviously could be a good trade piece for them. Also, his age, he's not going to be a guy that would be with the Hurricanes long term. Same with Markstrom. Markstrom, 34 years old, has uh $6.5 million cap hit. So regardless, should the Hurricanes make a move for him, they would have to move money, and that may be like their one deadline move they make, depending on what they move out. So, and then also with Markstrom and Fleury, both have no trade clauses. So whatever it is, I think that both may be modified no trade clauses, but it still, could potentially have to. They would potentially have to even say yes to coming to the Hurricanes as well. So there's no guarantee with those either. I think in terms of the goalie market, the best one for them to do is one I didn't initially think about, but it wasn't really until recently that I saw his name start to come around in trade rumors, and that is UC Saros from Nashville. That would be one I would love for the Hurricanes to make. That would be a move I'd love for them to make. I think it would really set them up well for the remainder of this year and next year because, again, they like guys with term left, and he still has a year left on his deal. Pretty reasonable, $5 million. He would fit in what they have right now. I could definitely see should they make that move, they obviously have to give up good. You could see a guy like Brett Pesce going in that trade or a Brady Shea. Could totally see something like that. That would free up some more cap space for them to potentially make another move for like a Vetrano or something like that. And then again, both of those guys having term left on their deals. That's the biggest thing here with looking at these names. Saros and Vetrano have term left on their deals. Both have a year left. That's something the Hurricanes like. And Saros, I believe, is also still relatively young as well. I, good Lord, cannot spell his name. 28 years old. So again, same age as Spencer Morton. So still going to be on the right side of 30. Also finished, which I don't know, the Hurricanes seem to like finish players. Um, so, I think, Saros, could definitely be a guy the Hurricanes go after. Um, I really, really do. He fits the bill for them. And I think that he could really be a guy that could get them over that hump in the playoffs when it comes to their goaltending. I think, regardless, they still need to make a move for a goal scorer. But say they go out and get Vetrano, get Saros, obviously, these kind of wishful thinking type trades. But if the Hurricanes are in the mindset of going all in, these two guys are guys that could work. This could work, folks. Um, and you again would still have to move some money out. Say they were able to do both of these guys, you'd have to move some money out to make room in the cap. And with the players you're going for, you're likely going to have to give up a good player or two. Um, so, you figure again, we'll just say Brett Pesci or Brady Shea, eh, or Tavo Teravainen. These guys that are pending UFAs for the Hurricanes that have, some cap hits. Moving these guys out could moving one or two of those guys out could easily help you bring in the other guy. Again, as of right now, there is room for Saros under the cap. There is room for Vetrano under the cap. You can make one of those moves right now. Literally right now. They're obviously not going to, but you can make those moves right now and it would work in the cap. Obviously, you're going to have to figure out where guys are going to fit in the lineup and all that stuff. But in terms of money, this stuff could work right now, or at least one of these trades. And then you make another trade, move a little bit of money out to bring the other guy in. These could work. And I think Saros and Vetrano are probably the best bets for the Hurricanes at the deadline. I'd love to see these guys put on a Hurricane jersey. I think they could both do really, really well for them. But ultimately, we're just going to have to wait and see. Obviously, number of moves can get made. As we mentioned earlier, none of us really saw the Trocheck and Shea trades happening when they did. So we could get caught out of left field with a trade, or we could totally have, one of these little tiny trade deadline trades that we've had before. Who knows? But I like Vetrano and Saros. I would want Don Waddell to make those moves as soon as possible. Again, trade deadline is next Friday. Crept up on me. So make sure you're following along on the socials at LO_Hurricanes, myself at Jared Ellis _96. Go subscribe on YouTube. Let me know who you are wanting the Hurricanes to go after at the deadline on the socials in the YouTube comments. As always, folks, thank you for making Locked On Hurricanes your first listen of the day, and let's go Canes.